Hi, I'm Jess, your Down to Earth Oracle. Thank you so much for joining me here at this Patreon membership level. This is your monthly tarot tidbit for the month of November. I wanted to talk about spreads and how tarot spreads work. So it's about placing the cards in a structure, in a framework that allow for specific meanings to come through. So if we take a standard Celtic cross where there's a card in the middle and then there's one above, two on each side, and one below, each position that is in the spread have specific meanings, and that allows for a clearer message to come through with the card in relationship to its position. And each position, they're not always stand alone. They all interact with one another to create a beautiful storyline. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they are just completely not connected. And sometimes that can be somebody else's energy that we're talking about or things you might be dealing with. But, in specific spreads, each card has a specific placement for a specific meaning to come through. And the way that works is, if we take the Fool, if we just have a hypothetical situation here, if we have the Fool as the center of this, Celtic cross spread, that would represent you. That would represent the person I'm reading for and where they're at, their main energy is at. And if I looked and I pulled a separate card for underneath them, that would be a position of what grounds them out, what is firm underneath them, what situations help keep their feet stable in this journey. But here's the thing about spreads is that they can be customized, so it might not be the same for every different reader out there. It depends. I do customized spreads, so I can change the meaning and the placement of what is in the specific framework that I'm working with for the tarot cards. Now, there are some tarot readers out there who actually freestyle it. That means there is no structure on the table whatsoever, and they're just pulling out cards. And it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Just depending on how good their skills are, what's going on. For me as a reader, I like framework. I like a little bit of specificity that allows me to see where things are, but I know where to step outside of that framework and where to keep it within, just depending on the thing. So keeping that in mind with spreads, I want to talk about Clarifier Cards next. And what Clarifier Cards are is usually a second deck is brought in. So we'll have the first deck, which will put, the main spread on the table in that specific structure with specific placements that the tarot readers may or may not explain, depending on how things go. I don't always explain them. Part of that's a little bit of the mystery magic. But when we bring in this second deck for clarifiers, what it does is it's like the cards on the table represent our ego, right? They're all on the surface energies, things that are happening, everything else going on. Clarifiers basically start pulling out the energy underneath that card. So if we think of the cards as like Tupperware containers, right? And we place them down in that main first spread, right? And then we pull the clarifier cards out, right? It's like pulling the Tupperware lid off and looking at the energies underneath that make up or support or might be the reason why this card is coming up in that particular position in the spread. So that's why a lot of other tarot readers and such use clarifier cards. And the beautiful thing about bringing in a second deck is that you can get repeat cards. You can get the same cards pulling up, like you can have two chariots, you can have two aces of wands come up. For me, a lot of times that just is a confirmation of reading the correct energy, especially with using general collective readings as well. It's a really big indicator that yes, I'm working in the correct energy. So there's that. The other thing I want to talk about is reading from the bottom of the deck. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. The bottom of the deck kind of represents the id in psychology. It represents those undercurrent energies, similar to the clarifier cards, but also just can kind of represent as an overall theme. It can also represent a second storyline that's going on within the main spread itself. It can represent another person's energy as well, or hidden messages and tidbits that you need to know or be aware of. And that is usually done a bit more freestyle, and it is a beautiful thing. So I hope this expands your knowledge of tarot, makes you a little bit more comfortable, takes a little bit of the mystery out, but still keeps a lot in there for you. And thank you so much for joining me for this month's Tarot Tidbit.